Welcome back to Healing Tapestries. I'm Tanya. Today we're talking about something that we all live with, often without realizing it. The stories that our mind keeps telling us that we buy into, creating rumination, sleepless nights, and ultimately fear-based living. Sound familiar to you? We all have our unique versions of these stories. Stories like, I'm not enough, or everything bad only happens to me, or I have to get this right, or I'm a failure. We know that what we believe affects how we think, which affects how we feel, which affects how we behave and respond in life. But just changing our beliefs and thoughts is actually more easier said than done. I'm sure you can all relate to that. As a therapist, I've been aware of the countless ways that we can try to reframe these thoughts, but really it's been through the knowledge gained from traveling and learning different Eastern philosophies that I've come to understand that we can do much more than just reframe to help with the monkey mind. When it comes to working with our habitual, unhelpful thinking, both modern psychology and ancient wisdom point to the same insight. The thought isn't the problem. The problem is the belief underneath it and our attachment to that belief. In this episode, we'll explore these stories from various philosophies and perspectives, as well as discuss some strategies for loosening them. So let's get started. Let's first break down some different approaches to the nature of our mind and unhelpful thinking, as well as its influence on how we feel. In CBT, unhelpful thoughts arise from core beliefs formed really early on in life. They're often influenced by our early childhood experiences through direct or indirect messages, or even just interpretations of our experiences. These beliefs, they become a lens through which we view ourselves, but also a lens in which we view the world around us. And this affects our automatic thinking. Yoga philosophy refers to a concept vritti, which I'll talk about more later in this episode. They're essentially mental ripples that are thoughts, emotions, and perceptions in our mind that distort our reality. This process keeps us from experiencing our true calm self. Buddhist perspectives teach us that attachments to beliefs and identities create suffering. Different language, same message. We don't suffer because thoughts arise. We suffer because we believe and attach to them. So let's explore further how these frameworks explain how the mind's patterns contribute to suffering and unhelpful thoughts. Core beliefs fuel thought distortions. For example, maybe past experiences of not feeling safe have fueled automatic thought patterns, like catastrophizing. If something is unknown, the worst is going to happen. Or maybe you were criticized in life, creating a belief of perfectionism, which led to automatic thoughts like, if I can't do something perfectly, I might as well not do it at all. Another thought pattern is called emotional reasoning. For example, if I feel anxious, I must be in danger. From an Eastern perspective, yoga philosophy, as I mentioned before, describes these patterns as vrittis, the fluctuations of the mind. Vrittis, such as misperceptions and imagination, involve the mind filling in gaps, creating stories about what's happening, often without solid evidence. This is where the two frameworks meet. Whether we call them cognitive distortions or vrittis, these mental fluctuations, they distort our perception of reality. They pull us away from what is actually happening and just reinforced old beliefs that really don't serve us anymore. In Buddhism, attachment is the main cause of suffering because it makes people perceive temporary things like objects or relationships or feelings or ideas as permanent sources of happiness or identity. This fundamental misunderstanding is the root delusion that gives rise to unhelpful thoughts and leads to a very rigid view of the world. A strong attachment to the self or our ego, or the idea that things are permanent and solid rather than impermanent and interconnected, creates a distorted perception of reality. This attachment feeds beliefs. Beliefs such as, I must have this or that in order to be happy, or things must always go my way or I'm not going to be okay, which are inherently unhelpful. Because that's kind of like depending on the weather, something that's always changing or out of our control or outside of us to feel okay on the inside. So basically, when these thoughts arise and we cling to them as absolute truths rather than fleeting mental events as they are, And if they're not in alignment with how we want things to be, our mind starts to react against them. We summon our mind to do something incredibly challenging, if not impossible. We summon it to predict the future based on the past, or find ways to control something that's out of our control. Once we believe these stories, we live in reaction rather than presence. So let's use an example of sending a text and not getting a reply. The thought appears, they're upset with me. The deeper belief might be, I'm not lovable. An emotion arises. I feel hurt. The body tightens and the mind spirals. This is the 𝐉𝐸, the mental ripple. And then we identify with it and we start scanning for evidence to confirm that it's true. We start thinking about what happened last week when our other friend didn't respond to our text. And then we react more. We say to ourselves, well, they must also not like me. In fact, I don't even think anyone likes me. I'm not even going to reach out to people. I'm just going to keep to myself. Then we feel alone and suffering grows. We can change that whole grip of that tape if we just simply notice the thought rather than believe it. So now let's talk about how we might apply Western and Eastern tools to loosen these beliefs. CBT invites us to examine the evidence and create a balanced thought. We essentially rewrite the script using cognitive restructuring. We challenge the beliefs and find a more balanced perspective. Or we use what we call behavioral experiments. For example, maybe you're afraid of speaking up at a meeting because you have this belief that people will judge you or people will laugh at you if you speak up. But then you do it. You do it anyways. You challenge the belief. And when you do and you realize no one was laughing at you, then it's easier to believe the new belief. We have a lived experience. Sometimes rewriting the story and changing the behavior, however, is very hard to do, especially if our nervous system is hijacked and we're activated. So that's where Eastern wisdom can really be helpful. It invites us to compassionately, without judgment, witness our mental experience without attaching to it. We can do this through all sorts of practices like mindfulness or meditation or breath work. I'll talk in future reels more about meditation, but just for now, we'll use it as an example. Meditation helps us loosen repetitive thoughts by changing our relationship to them, rather than trying to stop or control them. Research suggests that we have about 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And here's the thing, most of them are just recycled thoughts from the day before, often looping with the same worries, the same judgments, the same fears. Yoga philosophy understood this long before neuroscience. And these thoughts, they have a negativity bias. And these negativity biases are often shaped by past experiences or stress. Meditation doesn't try to erase the thoughts. It just helps us get us out of the loop. Learning to observe our vrittis or the fluctuations of our mind. And over time, creating mental space. And then we no longer have to believe them or react to them. A thought appears, an emotion follows, maybe a memory surfaces, but instead of trying to chase them, we just practice observing them. The 𝐉𝐸 is seen, and the thought may even remain, but it no longer controls us. It's not lived inside of us. Imagine how freeing that would be. Freedom is truly just the absence of clinging to all that chatter that we buy into every day. These beliefs that keep us trapped from living our authentic life, living life without fear. These beliefs are just conditioning. They're not truth. They may shape our behavior and habits and emotional reactions, but we are not our beliefs. We are the awareness beneath them. So now let's try a simple I can't mindfulness exercise. The purpose of this exercise will be to notice the unhelpful I can't thoughts without fighting them, and gently loosen their grip. So I'll invite you now to get comfortable, take a pause, and just breathe. Take one slow breath in and one slow breath out. Feel your body where you're sitting, and just notice your breath. Now notice the I can't thought. Bring to mind a thought that starts with I can't. No need to change it. Just notice it. Notice it and name it as a thought. Silently say, I'm having the thought that I can't.
This reminds us that it's a thought, not a fact. Be curious. Be curious, not critical. And ask gently, what might this thought be trying to protect me from? No fixing, just noticing. Add a little space. Try one of these, whichever feels kindest. Maybe I can't just for now. Or I don't have to believe this thought. Or I can take just one small step. Now return to the breath. Take another slow breath in, slow breath out. And now just notice if the thought feels the same, or if it feels softer, or even just a little more distant. To sum up today, remember this unified message. Beliefs shape our thoughts, and thoughts create suffering when we fuse with them. But beliefs, they can soften and they can change. Your mind is patterned, but it's not broken. You're not your beliefs. You are the awareness beneath them, steady, spacious, and whole. In future episodes, we'll explore more practices that help us work with the mind rather than against it. Thanks for joining, and see you next week.